Hello, and thank you for joining us for this beautiful concert film from Bozeman, Montana. I'm Jessica Gould, the founder and artistic director of Salon Sanctuary Concerts. We're so happy for you to join us today, and we are thrilled to have the very gifted Carrie Krause with us. Carrie, congratulations. That is just an exquisite performance. I can't believe you played on a 1740 instrument outside. and greetings and welcome from Bozeman, Montana. It's so wonderful to have you join us.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. And what a treat to get to see that video. I will admit I hadn't watched it until right now, and I'm just so thrilled. So thank you, Jessica and Aaron, for all of the work with putting that together.
Oh, you're very welcome. We kept coming up with ideas and putting in more footage up until the last minute. It's like I'm learning a video is kind of like a painting. Like it's very hard to think to know when you're done. Like, oh wait, but I could do that, and we could do that fade, and we could put that footage in at the end, and it would be so cool. And that's why a deadline is a really good thing. But, a video is only as good as the raw material. So without your brilliant performance, it wouldn't be anything to phone home about. So congratulations again. And
thank you.
In addition to being a brilliant soloist, you are also an artistic director, and you have founded this wonderful concert series in Montana, Baroque Music Montana. And I think a lot of people would like to hear more about this organization and how you were able to start an early music organization in a place where there's a lot of symphony orchestras and a lot of cultural activity, but not necessarily directed towards early music. Can you fill us in on that?
Sure. Well, in terms of early music, it really is, I feel like, the final frontier. There are some early music things that are happening in the state, but there certainly wasn't anything happening in Bozeman. And so I felt like there was a lot of room to explore and dream big, and also fully realizing that I love this music so deeply that if I wanted to be able to play it in the place that I most loved and for people that mean a great deal to me, I would have to make it happen. And so it felt fairly organic to invite a few friends. And the way that we could make it viable for them was to play it a number of times. So we went to various cities across the state. And we also really love playing in small venues because that's, how the music was originally meant to be heard often. And so there are beautiful big houses across our state, and it's been beyond all expectations to develop relationships with people who want to have music happening in their home or for their town, and have been really generous in helping us to make that happen. And so cultivating those friendships and being able to play music in really the optimal setting for it, where you have a really close connection with those who are listening. The musicians that come here tell me that this is their favorite thing to do all year. And I'm like, haha, right? But they keep saying it. So
better than hiking and
well, or playing concerts in other places,
right. Right.
In more prestigious halls and things, actually playing in a really small setting, music that you really want to play with people that you love playing with, or an audience that you get immediate feedback from that it means something to them. I mean, there really is nothing better than that.
Yeah. I mean,
I feel really
like
fortunate to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I totally grok what you're saying, because I feel like I'm kind of listening to myself talk about the foundation of Salon Sanctuary Concerts 11 years ago. And also the motivation is the same, in that you have a vision for something you want to do, and you look around and nobody else is doing it, so you do it yourself. And I think that happens more in early music, perhaps, because we're a constellation of smaller organizations and smaller ensembles. And smaller organizations and ensembles are more easily self-directed and can turn on a dime, and respond to the vagaries of whatever's going on, a pandemic, for example, or the existential crises that are facing larger organizations where they have to just shut down. We find a way to continue through periods of crisis, and it's easier for us. But that definitely, I absolutely 100%, that 100% resonates with me. The thrill of being able to present early music in a venue that's the right size and the right spirit, the right sense of direct connection with your audience and the intimacy of communication.
Yes.
In our age, that has been, for a while, that was really lost, because this repertoire would be presented in huge halls, and you would lose so much, not only acoustically, but just the spirit of the whole, the sense of history of the repertoire and the historical context.
Yes,
So,
and also the way that the instruments are set up, or that the voice worked at that time. You could really make use of the softer range of colors, and I love that. Being able to use that shading of the instrument, is unique to our field, and also playing in smaller spaces.
Yeah, and do you find that you play differently in a smaller space? Do you temper?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I feel like I've gotten really good at a musician through the series here at playing very softly and playing very colorfully. And I think if I didn't have that as a big part of the playing that I do as a musician, that, it would just be different.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy that, because I think it's just, it really communicates, soft as much as loud.
Well, it's like the difference between speaking and yelling,
Yes. Yeah. Soft speaking is nice.
Speaking as a singer, as a vocalist, but it's true. I mean, and my parallel journey during the pandemic, working on a lot of the most intimate repertoire you can of the lute songs that will be on my concert, and my working through that in great detail, because we're pre-recording. And then I went back to operatic repertoire, and I realized, wait a minute, this is in there, that intimacy of communication of, you go back to the later repertoire that's, bigger, and your performance of it becomes better informed and much more nuanced, because you went all the way in the other direction. And you kind of have to, you balance that out between the grand and the intimate, always, I think, in whatever repertoire you do.
Yes.
So it's a good argument for even people who don't consider themselves historical performance experts to perhaps dabble or stick a toe into early music and see what can be gained from performing that repertoire in those kinds of spaces. But in Montana, you have the added luxury, I would say, of being able to perform outside, right? Of doing these really kind of, in a way, it seems almost experimental to have performances outdoors, where it's not a formal concert going situation. It's not, a stage and an audience, and you get there at a certain time, you sit down, and it's very proper. Can you tell us more about those initiatives that you've implemented through your series?
Sure. Well, just this very past weekend, we are in a month-long celebration of Bach that's going to end with my playing all of the sonatas and partitas for solo violin. But we kicked it off this past weekend with on Saturday, Bach on Main, and on Sunday, Bach at Trails. So Bach on Main was musicians of all ages and abilities playing any instrument, and really they could play any tune that they wanted, all along our main street, just to get musicians out there and, not just in playing by themselves, but connected to other musicians in some way and sharing music. And maybe it lent a bit of focus to the work that they were doing individually, in the past weeks or months. And then on Sunday, we had Bach Trails, where we planted musicians at 6 trailheads across our valley. And we had over 40 musicians playing over the weekend. And it was so fun to get feedback from people wandering past saying, can you please play at every hike that I go on? And just these crowds, gathering around kids and families playing music together, or high school buddies, playing Bach double at the side of the trail. And so it was really, really neat. But my partner, Paul, we have a house that is on the edge of Forest Service land. We have one neighbor, and then out our backyard, you can walk all the way to Yellowstone Park without crossing a road. But it needed some landscaping. And so Paul had the idea to make a outdoor concert space for us. And we live on a mountain. And so he had the idea to put rock benches in there to create this outdoor amphitheater for us. So we, in the summertime, always do a backyard baroque performance, which is sometimes an open dress rehearsal or sometimes one of our actual concerts on our series.
Wow, that sounds so
in
amazing.
Our backyard.
That's how wonderful. And it's one of the silver linings of the pandemic that we've discovered new ways to connect with audiences and new ways to present music, knocking down that formality that's associated with really all forms of classical music. And you could call early music kind of a substrata of the great big arc of classical music. And that was the footage in the film of you playing outside in your jogging attire. was that the very fine jogging attire specifically chosen for 18th century repertoire? was that from the Bach Trails series, or was that kind of a demonstration for us of what that is like, or was it really taken
that was
from the one of the that was done for this Salon Sanctuaries presentation, but that attire is what I wear every day, every morning. It's representative. That's excellent. Well, that's what we when I was making these films that were shot in the wilderness where I've been living, which is the wilderness of Western Connecticut. And I'm on a glacier lake and in the mountains and everything. I had this velvet cape that I wore to, just to sing one piece. And everybody thought it was like this big deal costume. And I said, well, it was a $10 LARPer thing from Amazon. And underneath was my phone with my wires into my ears so that I could lip sync to the pre-recorded track. But I've often wanted to do concerts on docks. I thought that would be cool. To have the musicians on a dock and then the audience on the land. I think I'll need another year to plan that out. But I think it's a wonderful innovation and a gift that we have when we're out of urban settings to be able to present music that way. And we have a question coming in from Kenneth Bay. Hi, Kenneth. I'm curious how you discover something new to bring to the Bach solo violin repertoire, which has been trotted so many times by other artists. How do you bring something new and fresh to this repertoire?
Well, I think that is the gift of early music in general, is always asking that question, as particularly what the well-known pieces like Vivaldi's Four Seasons. If it's like it's kind of a requirement of playing it is to think about how do we not make this, just another go round. And the way that I get there is by the instruments, using historical instrument and reading and learning as much as I can about the repertoire. Honestly, with my process, with spending so much time with Bach and preparing, these 3 hours, this 3 hour set of music for just me. I have learned that a lot of it is playing in time, and just having a really strong sense of pulse. That's been really fascinating for me and really liberating in bringing to the music the expression that I uniquely hear, and having it make sense and sound right. That's been really surprising to me, but really fascinating. So kind of operating within these confines, I guess, of what we know historically and of pulse, that essentially allow you to be so creative and so free, and so personal with what you bring to it.
So in a way, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add to that too, that thinking of the music as improvisatory too. So you practice to have a set of options that will work, but then not ultimately making firm decisions, but being in the moment, free to choose how you shape something time-wise, dynamic-wise, articulation-wise, ornamentation on repeats. So I never really know what's going to happen with, the piece until I'm playing it. And what I have learned through recording myself and hearing recordings of performances, and the pandemic doing a lot of recording, is that when you're making it up, it sounds the best, rather than trying to make a decision and deliver on something that's nailed down.
Yes, that's true of vocal ornamentation too, in any period. The spontaneity of it is what makes it really fresh and makes it really speak and reach people.
Yes.
And when you write it down and just say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, it loses that magic. Yeah,
it's not compelling music making.
Right.
And one other element that I would add to that too is that I think with solo Bach, there's the amazing thing about Bach is that it does translate so well on modern instruments and in different styles, because it's just such amazing music. But whereas there's this really rich tradition of incredibly high level performance of this repertoire on modern instruments and in kind of a more romantic style, I think that we Baroque violinists have a lot of work to do in still discovering a really convincing way to play these pieces. And I don't think it's been done that much. So I'm not, it's not really in my consciousness of, okay, these pieces have been done so many times in this way, in Baroque style. How do I reinvent the wheel? I think with this, we're actually still finding the wheel, which is a difference than, say, the Four Seasons. But all these Four Seasons, I think those have been thoroughly, you really do have to be very creative if you're going to take those ones on.
Yeah.
It's a really great question. It's fun to talk about.
It is a good question. And I'm curious, did you started out on modern violin, or were you always?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, what inspired you to switch over to Baroque violin, and how long ago?
When I was finishing up at Carnegie Mellon, I went to a performance that Julie Andrzejewski played at Chatham College as part of Chatham Baroque. And having been, just working so hard towards the end of my undergrad, trying to play things right, with this direct lineage of my teacher, who knew the teacher, his teacher knew the composer. I felt really freed with Baroque music, that there was so much freedom to explore, and also the logic of the sources available to us that lent itself to that freedom, if that makes sense. Sure. But anyway, this performance at Chatham Baroque was, it was in a light-filled space in a small room. It was a lovely hall, and there were was a beautiful spring day, light was streaming in, and you had these elegant, beautiful people in front of you playing very dance-like music. And it was so lovely. I was just absolutely captivated. And from that moment on, sought how I could incorporate this into my life.
Yeah, yeah. And I bet that the other great pull of historical performance for so many of us who gravitate towards it is the freedom to do your own research and to make your own discoveries. And
Yes.
that's just so compelling. And I think
Yes.
it's one of the main things that separates let's say just life in a symphony orchestra from running your own organization and being active in programming and in doing your own research and all the things that go along with an active career in historical performance. But you mentioned to me previously that you were you are or concertmaster of one of the orchestras here in
Yes, of the Bozeman Symphony.
Yeah, the Bozeman Symphony. Well, that's very exciting. And how many violins do you own between modern and historical?
Well, the instrument that you saw me playing in the bulk of the performance is new to me. I just got it about a month ago after searching for a year. It's a 1740 instrument from Salzburg. And before that, I had a violin that I got when I left New York that I got from Teresa. That was a 1720 Klotz. Wow. And that was the instrument that I used actually for the outdoor shots. And okay. The performance, because I didn't want to take my much nicer, historical instrument outside. I have a modern violin that I use in the symphony. And then I have my backpacking violin that I take backpacking.
Really?
I got it because I was a part of a string quartet on the Green River. And this ties in a little bit to what we were talking about before, but part of my job in this float trip was to seek out the place for the musicians to play each night. And so to consider a natural landscape in terms of sound was a really fascinating concept to me. And then also just when you play outside, how much it makes you more aware of the natural acoustic and the natural sounds around you. It makes bird calls so much more vibrant. The sound of leaves. And so that interaction of music in a natural setting, I think is really fascinating. And also how it can inspire improvisation as well. So I like to take my violin backpacking.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. And it's when you play outside, you become hypersensitive to the natural world and to the sounds, and it causes one to become very introspective, I think, about one's own sound, and again, more nuanced performances of that we can bring after such discovery. It's really incredible. And in building the audience for your series, did you find particular challenges in getting an audience for early music when you were really kind of on a frontier there? You were starting something new. Did you find that it was particularly challenging to get people to be responsive to repertoire that was unfamiliar to them and more intimate settings, or was it relatively easy?
I think it's relatively easy. When we play in other places, there is somebody there who, is hosting or, providing a place for us to play. And so they do a lot of, they live in the town, they know people. And so it's a lot of word of mouth. It's just, and I really think that is the best way to get an audience. Certainly has been in our case. It's just person to person. And in around Bozeman, being concertmaster in a small town, I think that there is a reputation, that a certain level of music making will be will happen at a concert. And so we can play really obscure 17th century chamber music, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. I love that about running a series, is the sense of sharing, of finding something really exciting that just moves you so much that nobody knows about, or very few people know about. And then it's like you're unwrapping a gift for a bunch of friends when you perform it. And it's so wonderful to share that sense of discovery and excitement, and to go against the expectation actually that this will be stuffy or inaccessible or boring. It's actually quite the opposite. And I find that has absolutely no connection to how many degrees someone has, or how much they identify with early music, or all these sorts of gates, that we think about. I find that there's an immediate hunger for things that are new. And I dare I say that audiences are smarter than a lot of people give them credit for. They're just, the erudition isn't necessary. It's that the music is beautiful and presented in a spirit of generosity. And I think
honesty.
and honesty. Yes, honesty too. That's the most important thing. I think it's just so great to see series like this come up in different parts of the country where it's not expected. And it's funny. And the things that are expected of the musician, like our, what we do in our spare time, and it's when you share. I have a question for you from me. I mean, when you share these videos of you downhill skiing and hiking in dangerous places, does anybody like freak out at you and say, "Oh my God, you can't, that's so dangerous. What are you doing? You're going to break your hands. You're going to, you're not going to be able to play anymore. Stop it." I mean, do you ever get responses like that? Does anybody ever like express fear for your well-being?
Yeah, I would say mountain biking is challenging for musicians. It's a lot on your hands and your wrists, and you might fall on your elbow and that kind of thing. So, these sports are scary. It is true. I do fear for my life at times. But you choose your risks. I choose not to play hockey for a reason, and I'll pull the plug on a ski ascent if it's too icy and the consequences seem too high. But trail running, I always wear gloves because, a friend of mine, we were running around the Teton, the Grand Teton, as part of, I think that day was like 28 miles or something like that. And he fell and he broke his nose very badly. It was lots of blood. But he said that if he had gloves on, he probably wouldn't have been as bad because he was trying to save his hands. Oh. And so I always wear gloves, and I always try to wear a pair of gloves warmer than what I think I need, because I've been caught out so many times with freezing hands. And so that's my MO. And then with downhill skiing, the most common ski injury is not your leg, but it's actually breaking your thumb by falling on your pole. And so if it's not, if we're not in the backcountry where, if you drop your pole, then you have to hike all the way back up or whatever. The conditions kind of tell you what you can and cannot do. But if I can manage to not have a strap around my hand for my ski pole, I will ski without the strap on, because I want that pole going far away from me if I should fall.
I see. Yeah. I mean, I'm speaking as someone who is very enthusiastic about swimming in open, cold water that most people are terrified of. And I have 3 different wetsuits that are carefully graded to the temperature of the water. And occasionally, to just amuse my friends, I put something up on Facebook of me jumping into the lake and screaming. And I mean, it's all in good fun, but I really do that. Like, my last swim was in December and it was 45 degrees. And I got this like, "You're gonna kill your voice. You're gonna get the flu. You're gonna die." And the thing is that doing these things actually makes us better musicians, doesn't it? Like not only the
Yes.
athleticism, but just the confrontation of risk, I think. Like
Mm,
your brain handles adrenaline and risk. It's related to performing. And I think there's
yes.
a corollary there.
Hmm.
You agree?
I do. Like, I love getting out on the snow every day that I am here in the wintertime because the snow is different every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you could say the same thing about music and your instrument. Um, but yeah, the physical aspect, I really rely on that as a
Mm-hmm.
performer, you know, feeling physically strong
Yeah.
and grounded and using a good trail run or ski before a concert to get the
Yeah.
extra energy out, you know, so you
Yeah.
can have just the good energy.
Exactly. Yeah, you kind of
And
burn off the sizzle
yes,
focus.
yeah, and a lot of stamina. You know, I'm a distance runner. I'm training now for a 50K that's in our mountains here, and
Wow.
it's a race that I try to do as often as I can.
Amazing.
But I find like that stamina is really helpful to me as a performer, and I'm
Yeah.
really aware of it in preparing, you know, of the solo Bach. As I
Yeah.
mentioned, this 3 hour long program that I
Yeah.
need a lot of
Yeah.
stamina for.
Yeah. And it's interesting the corollary of the concentration we need as musicians. Like you can't let your concentration fail for a second when you're on stage
Right.
performing anything. I mean, anything, much less this, which is a mental marathon. Um, and even uh, I long distance swim, and I work it up, through the summer to doing, a couple miles, which is for me that's about 2 or 3 miles is in cold water is what I can do. But for people who musicians even who aren't particularly athletic, we're still all athletes. The act of performing is an act of athleticism, and it's of
Mm-hmm.
coordination with your body and your mind that I always find is so similar to an elite athlete. What we do, what all of us do, and
Yeah, it's a
uh,
thrill. It feels really, really good.
yeah, yeah, the high off of it is I can't compare it to anything else. And when you're done, you have this energy for like 48 hours of like being superwoman. It's just it's wonderful. We have another
From the cold
yeah,
water
well, from the
swimming.
the cold water, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, this is veering off into another kind of discussion, but the vasoconstriction of your blood going all to the center of your body when you're immersed in cold water for a long period of time, and then rushing out again back to your extremities when you get out of the water has an effect on your vagus nerve, and then blah blah blah. I'm not here to promote cold water swimming. I mean, if you want to, there's lots of resources for that. We're here to talk about Bach and early music. And on that subject, we have another question, this time from Aaron, who is making everything happen at Salon Sanctuary these days besides me. Aaron is our AV director. And what are some of the ways you engage younger musicians with early music? As a classical musician in a rural community with no, quote, high arts, unquote, community, it would be interesting to know what your first steps to opening the gates were in Montana, as you said earlier. Good question.
We well, I am a teacher as well. I have 25 students, and I teach young children as well as advanced high schoolers. So I'm really passionate about educating the next generation. It's my greatest responsibility, and with that comes a great deal of joy too. So I think it was maybe 5 years ago that we started our historical performance workshop here. And so that is open to 50 participants, professional, amateur, or at the high school level, to come for a long weekend and work with faculty that comes from across the nation. And it's specifically for modern instruments because that is the population that we have here. To train musicians here in period instruments exclusively is, I think, less useful to them.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, we try to really open their eyes to the idea of looking at music for the clues that a composer writes into the score that tell you how to musically realize it. And then also investigating the larger cultural context. And that applies to any kind of music, from any period. And then also a more relaxed physical approach to the instrument as well, which is so key for Baroque music, but again, applies to musicians playing any kind of music.
Yeah.
This year, next season, we are going to open with a collaboration with the high school here, which our high school program in Bozeman has 5 orchestras. There's a huge number of kids that love playing music here, and a lot of support for music. And we're going to do a side-by-side performance with them. And I also, sharing the stage with my students is the biggest thrill. There's really nothing more rewarding than that. Especially when you know them for a long time and you cultivate this skill together. And so we try to do that as well.
Wow. And you mentioned something called baroque or something.
Yes.
You've got to tell us about that.
Well, that idea came from my good friend, John Lenti, who is a theorbo player who plays here probably more than any other musician. And as part of our workshop, we have master classes in chamber music and orchestra and mealtime lectures, and we do baroque at the end of one of the days. And so the participants can bring their concerto or sonata, and we meet in a beautiful historic mansion late at night with wine, and have the faculty be their backup band. So we play the orchestra part or the continuo part if they're doing it. Have the faculty play the continuo part. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun.
That must be so empowering to them too. That must just give them this total lift as they're.
Well, I want them to have the experience of, it's one thing to play with a symphony orchestra and come in and read down your piece, and then that's all the time that you have. And it's another experience to play with an orchestra where you're really recognizing all these human beings, playing these parts right behind you, and how interactive that can be, and the impact that you can have with how you play your piece and how people respond.
Yeah. So, that just sounds like such a wonderful thing to do, and such an original initiative. And can you tell us some of what you have coming up for Baroque Music Montana for the next season that you are at liberty to share at this juncture?
Oh, sure. This is like one of my favorite questions ever. So
I'm
very happy
to oblige.
Well, our season runs through the summer. So we're going to finish out our season here with Reggie Mobley, who's a countertenor, with a series of concerts along with Elliot Figg, who is a harpsichordist, and John Lenti that I mentioned on theorbo. And there is a excellent TV program that is filmed here called 11th and Grant that's like Austin City Limits. And it's won a bunch of Emmys. It's really well done. So we will do these series of concerts in preparation for recording this PBS episode. And in August, we will do our workshop, and Julie Andrzejewski, who I mentioned earlier today, will be coming and doing a Baroque dance focus for our workshop this summer. And we'll do a lighthearted, humorous program around Giuseppe Valentini called Will You Be My Valentini? Or the Little Ragamuffin, which was his nickname, apparently. So come to our concerts if you want to find out why he was called the Little Ragamuffin.
I need to get on a plane.
And then next season, we will collaborate with an amazing organization in town called Montana Shakespeare in the Parks. That has, I don't know how many performances they do a year, maybe 100 of Shakespeare plays all across this region for free. And we will be staging Amadeus in collaboration with Baroque Music Montana for on-stage musicians in early March. And we're going to kick off our season with a Mozart-themed program in collaboration with the high school, as I mentioned earlier. And it's just wonderful that the symphony here will also be playing a Mozart symphony around the time of the Amadeus production, and the opera, our opera company just following, will be doing Marriage of Figaro by Mozart, a month later. And so I'm just so glad that all of these organizations arts organizations in Bozeman are able to collaborate, and fuel each other's fire towards the end of this brilliant music.
Yeah.
If I had to choose one other one, okay. So, John, this has been so long in the works. I guess pretty much every program is this way. Just Country can relate with ideas that
some say,
years down the pipeline, they actually happen.
Yep.
So we will be doing the first ever period instrument recording done in Montana. And we did a Kickstarter about a year ago, at least a year ago, and met our funding goal right away. So that was very exciting. But this will be with John Lindsay and myself playing 17th century violin sonatas. And before that, we're going to do a tour of the High Line of Montana, which is a really rural area that I've never been to, to get ready for this recording. So we will be releasing a commercial recording that will be the first period instrument recording done in Montana.
Well, that sounds really exciting. And I will be the first one to buy your recording when it comes out. Whatever it is. Because I know how good it's going to be, because I know all of you. And I know Reggie too. So, well, that sounds like a very exciting season of just diverse and wonderfully conceived offerings. And I wish you the best. Congratulations with not only performing beautifully as a soloist, but getting off the ground a fully functional and delightful organization that's bringing joy to so many people. I know how hard that is to start to get something off the ground. It's really, really tough. So it's a Herculean feat sometimes. So brava again. And that concludes our time with Carrie Krause. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast today. And thank you so much for joining us again from Northwestern Connecticut and Bozeman, Montana. This has been a presentation of Salon Sanctuary Concerts. We hope you'll join us next week when the great Nigel North joins us from Bloomington, Indiana, to perform a program of German music from 1676. The program's called Spirit of 76, performed by an Englishman. So please take a moment, if you've enjoyed our programming, we hope that you'll take a moment to look at our website, salonsanctuary.org, and maybe consider supporting our offerings. Arts organizations across the country need your help more than ever. Music is a need. It is a necessity. It is not a luxury. And we can't continue without the support of our viewers and our listeners. So we welcome your generous support, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much. Have a great day.